keep up. Please don't crash. That's 5-0 on your ass. Don't get stuck. My shit blasting up. Window tinted, can't get caught. My bitch bad, sport more leave you on your ass. Taking up.
What's the deal, everybody, man? This is Ricky Montoya checking in, aka the Foolest of all bears, and you are now tuned in to I Think You're My Driver podcast, man. So thank you so much to everybody who has always tuned in with me thus far. Of course, if you are not already following me, that is going to be at ITYMD.podcast. Of course, that is going to be on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music Podcasts, and everywhere else that you can enjoy podcasts at, man. So thank you to everybody who tunes in. Thank you to everybody who watches. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, go ahead, be a part of the family. Because I'm noticing a little bit in the algorithm as far as where my clips are reaching. Nobody is subscribing, but listen, come on, man. It's all good. So I want to thank everybody who has been tuning in with me thus far, everybody who has been sticking with the journey every step of the way, even though sometimes we might take a little bit of a bigger leap, you know. Sometimes you got to have a little bit of a longer stride, because let's be honest, when you're a kid and you're going against your cousins, you're going against your siblings or wherever, it's like, ooh, let's see who can step the farthest. You got mad at your older sibling whenever they got that growth spurt and they were able to stretch just a hair past yours. Then you're like, oh, you know, most kids, they just sit there and scream. But, you know, there was always that one kid that's like, you know what? And they just sock you in the side of your shit, man. So it's just, you know, hey, man, I say that to say that, listen, we're back on track and we're doing what we need to do, man. So with today's episode, man, I kind of want to give a little bit of an update of where I am here. So I actually made the decision that I'm going to go ahead and start committing to like reading/listening to audiobooks. I want to be able to hear different perspectives from people. And I love to hear where people end up going in their life based off of the steps during their journey. And this specific book that I was reading is actually one of the most recent Charlamagne books that he just put out. So this book is called Get Honest or Die Lying, Why Small Talk Sucks, like I say, by Charlamagne. Now, for those of you who don't know about Charlamagne, you know, he is a host on The Breakfast Club. And Charlamagne is, I guess you could say, the star host. At least that's how I see it for a very long time. Because most of the time when you see clips related to this show, it was always Charlamagne. And that's something that, you know, kind of Charlamagne dives into just a little bit into this book as far as like where his stardom due to like a lot of the antics and a lot of the crazy stuff that he was saying to people on the radio. But in this book, he kind of tells it from a perspective after going through therapy, kind of taking time to reflect and learn better things about himself as far as doing right by his family, you know, getting his mental health in check, making sure that he does his thing to stay on his fitness journey of basically staying up and moving, and having a partner that he has his wife for many years, saying that his wife is very brutally honest. And one thing that he actually talked about in the book specifically is that he said he grew up that same way, just being very brutally honest. And he said that his dad is the one that specifically was like, man, if people want to talk to you, they want to make sure that they're ready to hear the truth because you're ready to give it to them cut and dry. And he kind of turned and made that one of his very things that made him the most popular on The Breakfast Club, because there's multiple clips where he was telling certain people like, oh, no, this isn't this, or, you know, asking some really left field questions that you would never think a radio host would do. And when in the book, he actually talks about in the midst of all that happening, of course, it raised up the ratings. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, I'm a magnet to this. So this is what brought people here. You know, let me find a way to continue. Let's see how I can make it crazier. Let's see how I can do this. And over time in the book, he actually specifically says that, like, watching back now from the journey that he has went on, all the growth and therapy that he's went through, how he kind of gets like that secondhand embarrassment watching those clips back, being that he's not that person anymore. And it's one of those things that I feel like a lot of us have kind of went through on our own when we think back about life and some of the decisions that we have made, bro. And I think that that book was like very important because even though small talk can be very important as far as in your social skills, one thing that he talks about is that if we're not getting rid of small talk, we're getting rid of non-productive small talk. not basically seeing that everything is a benefit, but wanting to make sure that if we are in a certain space, such as where Charlamagne is, which he talks about helping people out and putting people in certain positions, that when these people are reaching out to you for opportunities, they're not reaching out in a dead end or with nothing to show or not even giving a specific entail of what they're looking to do for you or X said person. So it's one of those things where you can kind of, think back about little things as far as like how you interact with people, how you handle the interactions, and even if you don't want to be a part of the interaction, you use it to your best of your ability. So, the one thing that I thought of whenever I was writing out this episode is probably about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I actually had a job. This is hilarious that I'm gonna open up with this story, but I'm gonna go for it. I had this job where I got an opportunity to work from home. This is in the midst of like the tail end of the pandemic. I think it was probably maybe 2022. So I mean, not really consider the panorama, but it's pretty universal to everybody else, right? So get this job working for this company. I'm not going to give the name of this company, but basically what I did is I was a outbound sales representative and I offered appointments through XYZ insurance companies where they send a provider to your home. Oh, I'm going to, take your blood pressure. Let's check your weight. Let's check your height. What's your diet like? What do you do for this? Do you do any fitness? And it's a free service because apparently insurance covers it. I think it was like twice a year was the case. So, of course, like I said, outbound calls sales representative. So 9 times out of 10, majority of the calls are just voicemails. And we weren't supposed to leave a voicemail. You just let it hit end, got a voicemail, next call. And these things came in like clockwork, man. I can only count maybe on one hand how many times I've had downtime. So start working this job. I want to say this was probably in the summertime. So maybe May, if not June. Somewhere around that time is when I started working this job, working from home. When I started working the job, first day orientation, basically you log onto your computer. We're on a huge Zoom meeting. We're pretty much introducing ourselves to each other. We're learning about different people who work for the company, people that we will be working with as far as the managers that are going to be taking in us as agents. And it's hundreds of people on this Google chat meeting, man. So, you're basically kind of just thrown into this fire. And I've never really worked for any kind of call center or anything like this. So this is like, a change of pace for me. And it was definitely not something I was ready for. I'll tell you what. So start working, doing the orientation. We're going through a couple days of training, modules, tests, quizzes, and, reading courses or whatever the case, right? So probably about day 4 or 5, they're like, hey, so here, after we get through this training here today on day 4, they're like, we're going to take a little bit of time on the phones. So you guys are going to have like a very soft opening and not going to be able to get hit with so many calls since everything is very fast paced and you guys are new to this. We want to kind of give you an opportunity to figure out the flow, learn how to get through the scripts. Scripts, exactly like I said. It's like a robocall, bro. So basically what you do, the person answers the phone, you introduce yourself. My name is Ricky with such and such company calling on behalf of whatever insurance on a recorded line. I believe I'm looking for such and such. And you literally read this script word for word and got people to schedule an appointment. And it was like one of those things to where it's just like, of course you gotta make it your own, but you're reading a script. Like it just felt just so weird, bro. So basically they say, hey, day 4, whenever we start taking these calls, you guys are going to jump right on the phones. But, like I say, you guys are going to be in that soft queue. Usually every single agent we put on this line, they're not going to get any type of calls at all for at least like the first 10 minutes. It might be less than that, but a lot of the times I've noticed that a lot of new agents, as soon as they hit the queue, it takes about at least 10 minutes for a call to hit them because this queue is so like infinitely passed to you. Like we want to make sure that you guys can understand this and be prepared for what you're going through. Listen, that was a load of bullshit. Bro. So, just to kind of, do a little bit of backtracking, like I say, working from home the whole time, going through training, and everything is just modules. So at a certain point in time, by about day two, I was like, huh, okay, so this is what it's going to be. And they say we're going to be doing this for at least a week and a half. Man, I'm going to go ahead and load up a bowl. I just bought an ounce the other day. So, I'm pinching and pinching and, oh, okay, I'm just going to load this up in a bowl. Here's one, go back, do what I got to do, right? Bro. So I did the same thing on day four. I'm going through the training and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. We're not going to get a call for about 10 minutes. Bro. Before I hit available, I literally toasted up and was just like, okay, get prepared, get ready. Bro, I literally couldn't even get everything out of my mouth as far as the words. A call came through so quick as soon as I hit available. I literally was like, thank you for calling such and such, or my name is Ricky with such and such. It's like I literally just was like stuttering. Luckily the person just ended up hanging up the phone on me. And I was just like, bro. I was like, you know what? This is what happens when I think that somebody tells us a certain time frame that their word is bond, because it's like, man, you've been working here longer than that. But also let you know, be prepared to work, because now you sound stupid on a recorded phone line that's supposed to be going to this insurance company, bro. And the first call too, I felt like such a like, bro, what's the matter with you? Like, you're an adult. But it's just like, like I say, looking back, it's just like one of the things where I realize like where you grow out of, and you kind of get a chance to reflect back on a lot of those times, or how you treated a certain responsibility. Like I say, everything comes down to how you handle the situation and how you were able to look back to find a way to grow out of that. So kind of, a little bit of a, opening up the floodgates to get started, but, kind of moving on from that, man, back to, of course, regular schedule. I'm getting back to a lot of my stories that I remember back whenever I was doing Uber and Lyft. Because listen, man, when I tell you, I have no problem to admit that I had a lot of embarrassing moments, man. But there was a couple of moments that really, really stuck out in my mind here, bro. So one time, man, I actually went to go pick up this lady over here. I think it was in Moore, just like right on the other side of the Amazon building, maybe about 15 minutes from that spot. So go to pick up the girl. She gets in the car and, introduces herself. We kind of just start breaking the ice and everything. And she tells me actually that she got this job working at Taco Bell. And I was like, oh, okay, well, how's the Taco Bell? She's like, I mean, it's not my favorite job, but a job is a job. So it's like something that like, I feel like a lot of people just are just so afraid to work because it's just like, the status. And she's like, shoot, I don't really care. Like, I can't remember how old she was, but I remember she was at least like 21. So it's like one of those things to where it's like, listen, if you got to get a job, but don't settle to that job. Don't settle. So basically she's telling me about how Taco Bell is this and how she was like very surprised to be able to just get a job, and being that it's just working a fast food job, she was expecting that it's like, oh, it's going to be this. I'm just going to be stuck flipping and packaging these tacos and telling somebody, $27.75. And she said that literally actually within about 5-6 months, she was able to be lines up to be like a supervisor from a shift lead. So it's like, oh, okay. Like, that's very like commendable. How does that feel? And she gets to telling me like, it's just like so good and so reassuring, because I was at this point to where everything was kind of just spiraling down. I just got out of college. It was this and that, just basically getting thrown to the wolves and having full responsibility, and then not being responsible to begin with. So now you got to find another cushion to fall back on. Taco Bell. So this place was probably about maybe 7 to 10 minutes away. And to give you kind of an aspect of where we are, right over there on the other side of the Amazon building, which is a service road to I-44. So coming up this service road, I think that street right there is like Southwest 104th or something like that. Right there at that stop sign where 104th meets the end of the service road, right there is where I'm stuck at this stop sign. And so she's talking to me and telling me about Taco Bell, and we're about 2 minutes out. And I look left Everything looks clear on the left, and for some reason, something tells me to just, go ahead and advance on. So I just let off the gas or let off the brake pedal and just kind of just start rolling. And next thing you know, as I'm looking right and coasting into the traffic, there's a car hauling ass, bro. I'm telling you, like flying. So I have no choice. Like I'm already committing to being in the middle of the road. As soon as I literally see the car, no joke, like a cartoon, I start lifting my knee up like Goofy and say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And I floored the car and my car was like, vroom, took off. Little did I know, there was an incline before a hill. Had no idea. And I'm flooring it going in my little Dodge Dart, trying to avoid getting hit by this 2007 Toyota Tacoma. Very fair. But as soon as I'm hitting and going up to this incline, my front tire buckled and the car bounced, then the back tires buckled, the car bounced, and the girl ended up bouncing and smacking the top of her head on the roof of my car, bro. Oh, I was like, oh my God. I was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And she's like, yes, yes. And she's cracking up laughing. She was like, dude, that was awesome. That's never happened before. And I was like, I'm sorry. I did not know that car was coming and I kind of had already committed to it. So I am so sorry about that because I'm so concerned about my 5-star rating at this point. Like really had, this is so messed up. But in a certain way, I wasn't fully concerned about how she was feeling. I was so concerned about the review that she was about to leave and really diminish my 5-star rating. I was like, damn, I'm not gonna be able to maintain this status and I'm gonna have to rip off that bumper sticker that I got, fool. And so she's like, no, everything's cool. Like that didn't really hurt. Like it was so funny. Like that was crazy. Like, oh my gosh, that was a funny ride. I was so depressed. I really didn't want to go to work today. But you know what? You really lightened my mood up just by allowing me to smack my head. Sometimes you need a little bit of an attitude adjustment, man. When you get that attitude adjustment, such as smacking your head up there, you kind of reflect on life. It's like, life ain't so bad. Yes, I work at Taco Bell, but you know what? This is just a stepping stone. And I think that's another thing that you also have to acknowledge as far as when you look back at embarrassing moments, is it really is just like a stepping stone to really carve out the lane for where you are trying to go as an individual, bro. So moving on from that, man. Another story that kind of came across my mind whenever I was writing out this episode actually also occurred in a kind of similar setting, but this time was kind of a little bit of a bad interaction. So I feel like this was karma. Now, I don't feel embarrassed about it because it was a complete accident. It was a complete accident. But I went to go pick up this guy over here at this apartment complex that's actually maybe like not too far away from the outlet mall, I think. So go and pick up from these apartments, and the apartments had like a gate, such as most apartments in a lot of those areas, It has a gate that, of course, does not work. So, pull through the gate, and I'm going through the apartment complex. Mind you, in this area, the service was not that great. So I'm already having trouble locating the passenger based off of the little pinpoint because it could not catch a reception. And going through here, I drive to the end of the complex, and then I drive back to the front. And while I'm sitting there within the 5 minutes, I called the number at least twice. Person never answered the call. So I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, I'm getting towards the end of my 5 minutes. So whatever. And as I'm sitting there, and it's about the end of the 2-minute mark of me waiting for the person, finally I see this person walking from the other side of the building where I actually drove to, and nobody was over there. And he literally was like walking, and I could see him walking with a purpose, There's always those people that just have like that step to them to where you could tell they're just upset. But you know what? He gets in the car, and I was like, hey, man, are you such and such? He was like, yeah, are you the lift? And I was like, yeah, I am. He was like, man, like, why did you go all the way over there? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. I went all the way over there, and there was nobody out there. And I called the number twice, man. Is this your number? And he's like, yeah, it's just like, it's hot, and I got to walk all the way over here, and this, and that. I was like, oh, my bad, man. That's why I called you and, drive over there. And that's why I called twice to make sure that I could get a hold of you. So, that's my bad, bro. And he's like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, it's hot. It's all this. It's all that. I was just like, man, fuck this guy, bro. And I just started driving. So mind you, I went all the way to the front waiting for the guy because nobody was standing out there. And like I say, right there at the front of the apartment complex was a gate. Did not work. I did not know how close I was to this gate, and apparently I was right there towards where the gate meets the end of the track to sit there. Mind you, this space right there that covers the track to hold the gate in place is probably about a good maybe 3-4 inches tall, maybe 5. Pretty decent size compared to a tire. Bro, I literally just kept driving, had no idea I was that close, and literally both tires buckled. Bow, bow. And he was all upset, didn't put his damn seatbelt on, and whenever the car buckled because I hit that bump, he he smacked his head on the window of the car. And he was like, oh, damn. And I was like, oh, man, are you all right? He was like, oh. I was like, you know what? He was like, what did you hit? And I was like, that's my bad, man. I didn't even know I was that close to the gate, so that's my fault. And he's just like, oh, like. And I'm sitting there like, that's what the fuck you get for acting like an asshole when you got in the car, bro. No reason for you to act like that. But you know what? It's like, I got something for you. So, like I say, allegedly, that was an accident, man. But I want you to understand something. I look back on a lot of those moments and it's just like, you know what? At the cost of my car that I was putting that car through, bro, it made no sense for me to be like sometimes very careless, but also like sometimes let's prove a point here right now. I don't like being this kind of person. The one thing that was always like a stepping stone for me as far as like doing Lyft and Uber is having to deal with those kind of people who, necessarily were in a certain mood, because you either can walk on eggshells and be a complete walkover, or you can take complete control over the situation. Now, a lot of the times you say what you can, and as soon as you de-escalate the situation, there's 2 options that you could go with. You could either tell somebody to get out of the car, or you could say, hey, we can continue this ride, and this is what's going to happen. Or, like I say, option 2, you can get out of the car. Now, in all honesty, I didn't really run into a lot of those situations. So, confrontation is like really annoying. Let's be honest, bro. Like, I feel like growing up, a lot of us got into a lot of confrontations when we were in middle school, high school, because some of us always felt like we had a point to prove, or we're trying to show that we were cooler down, or whatever the case. Maybe I'm projecting. But it's like something to where you kind of get an understanding that later in life, you got to pick and choose your battles, man. Like I say, one of the ways that, of course, we can handle this, you can get out of the car. Or you need to be somewhere. So you would hate to have to wait for another ride, right? Hate to have to wait for it. So you know what? I gave you the choice to stop yourself and not get in the car. But, you chose to get in the car and still be an ass. So, shout out to the side of your cranium hitting my window, man. That's why you wear a seatbelt in the car, man. That's why you wear a seatbelt in the car. But also, that's why you are good to people. Because if you want to think that karma and God is not real, God is really going to show you something like, oh, this is how you want to act today? Yeah. Listen, man. I don't care what you believe in, man. But God is going to show you something, man. God is going to show you that, everything is covered. And that's where I started to feel like I never feel concerned that I'm going to run into a lot of these scenarios, because even in those cases, I always had somebody watching over me and somebody keeping me care. Now, of course, don't be delusional and think that, you could just be invincible. Don't think just because on Halloween to, try to match with your son, you wanted to dress up as Thor so your son could be Spider-Man. Listen. Pull that same hammer out and see if you can get that thing out of the dirt, man. That's all I'm saying, bro. That's all I'm saying, man. But anyways, moving on from that. I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all a couple more things before I let y'all go. But there was another story that stuck out in my mind whenever I was thinking about these embarrassing times. Now, the ride of its own wasn't super embarrassing, but looking back, like Charlamagne says in the book, reflecting and taking that time to remember how I acted at this time was honestly pretty embarrassing. So at this time, I'm working at a dealership as like a valet person. I just check people in. So I saw my job as like kind of low at this point, but I should be more appreciative of life having a job, man. So I got this gig, started working and doing Lyft and Uber because I'm freshly 21. And honestly, when I turned 21, I signed up for Lyft and Uber quicker than I went to go and grab a bottle. Like, I really don't drink. So I was like, oh, everybody's turning 21. My mom's like, oh, are you finally going to get your first legal drink? I'm like, really? Like, my first drink? Like, what are you talking about? And she was just like appalled. But I don't know, man. I just don't really see the hype in it, man. So doing this Lyft and Uber stuff, I every once in a while would do it on my lunch breaks or when I got off of work, especially if I got off early, because whenever you worked at that dealership, 1 week a month you worked a Saturday, and when you worked a Saturday, you got to leave earlier than everybody else since you have that extra time, right? As I'm working at this dealership, I really wasn't managing my money well. Like I say, man, freshly 21, I jump out into the pool, the deep end, bro, of adulting, and just like, oh, my lady and I, we're gonna get an apartment. I wasn't managing my money beforehand, so let's see how this goes. And once I start doing Uber and Lyft, I'm like, ooh, okay. So like within like about 4 or 5 hours, I was able to accumulate, $60 to $70. I'm only spending about $20 in gas, so the rest of it is profit. It's really not that much profit, but hey, at that point, an extra $80 to $100 just for a weekend of not doing a whole lot, man, run it. $100 is $100, right? That's where I say, like, looking back at a lot of these points where I was, it's ridiculous to think that I really went and took this lady over there to Midwest City from the village on my lunch break. So Midwest City from the village is typically about a good 25 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on the route that you take. This route in particular that it sent me on took me through the damn took me to see the Hoover Dam before I went to go and drop this lady off at her place, man. It was ridiculous, dude. So I'm basically taking the scenic route going up Sooner Road from the village, bro. Like passing by the casino and stuff like that to get to Sooner Road to drop this lady off in Midwest City. So majority of the ride we really didn't talk. Kind of broke the ice from the beginning, but she put in her headphones pretty quick in the middle of the conversation. So, I picked up the social cue and I turned my music on and just started driving, man. At this point, I'm okay being a taxi driver. So we're going over here through Midwest City. And for those of you guys who don't know, in Midwest City over there on Sooner Road, and I want to say that is 10th. Probably not, but anyways, right there is a train track where the road is the most messed up, man. And I was completely unaware because I did not grow up or frequent an area to drive across train tracks to know that those are the most messed up roads. I just started coasting it, bro. The light was green. I'm going about 30, 35 miles an hour. I'm going over this train track. Little did I know that there was a little bit of a pothole on the left and the right side. So left tire caught it, right tire caught it, and the lady in the back seat flung right and then swung left out of the seats. Her purse emptied out onto the floor of the car and she was completely over. And on top of that, my phone mount fell on to the driver's side door. So we hit that thing going pretty hard. But like I say, unbeknownst to me, that the train track area was going to be the most messed up road, bro. So it was just like one of the things where I was like, oh my God. I was like, are you okay? I was like, did your whole purse get empty? She's like, yeah, like every last bit of items are out of my purse. She was like, I didn't even know that I had this pack of gum in my purse, but all of a sudden it's now on the floor of your car next to everything else that was inside the purse. And I'm dying laughing, but I'm also like, dang, I'm glad you took this well. But like I say, I was freshly moving to Oklahoma, wasn't fully aware, excited to get out there, and really just trying to get back to work on time. Bro, I would literally be going over my lunch, just like taking these Ubers, making $9 to come back to be like, oh yeah, I just paid for my Little Caesars pizza, man. Like, come on, bro. You're not really making the ends meet here. But you know what? To my 21-year-old mind, man. It's funny, like, thinking about that. But it's also like Charlamagne says in the book, sometimes you got to take that time to do the work as far as like doing therapy, take the time out to self-reflect, to kind of learn what ways to grow. Because the best way to break out of a habit is to know what ways you connect to the habit and what makes you so prone to stick to the habit. Now, when you're going through that specific transition in life and you're taking that time out to really learn stuff about yourself, man, you kind of learn on what you want to maintain and what's something that you want to be able to grow out of. And one thing that I mentioned on the last episode was watching like the financial audit. And I feel like that kind of helped me be able to kind of take this time to self-reflect on times where I need to grow out of stuff. Or in the past, when I've looked back and been around other people who've told me similar things that they've done, it's made me kind of realize like, man, that's what that sounds like. Okay. So now I know the perspective that I need to come from and the perspective that I need to see myself from. And that's really where it starts, man. It starts from the way that you view yourself and the way that you want to be seen. So people are only going to acknowledge the way you want to be seen based off the way you perceive yourself and present yourself to people. Now, when you're going through a lot of those times where you're still learning yourself, or, like Charlamagne said, trying to gain the ratings or bring people closer to pay attention to you, a lot of the times that ego is going to fluff you up to make you think that you got to be this certain type of person. But like I say, the way you perceive yourself is the way that you need to be 100% confident on, because you don't want to have these times of being a 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old person looking back and reflecting on the times where you wish you could have done things different, and here you are. Because, like I say, man, I mean, speaking for myself, I'm a young man, 27 years old, but you can't, I'm not saying you can't start too early and you can't start too late, but at a certain point you kind of got to take that moment to really sit yourself down to know where you want to go, man. I'm not saying get a podcast and just start telling all your dirty little secrets that you did, man, because we know what you did last summer. But what is very important is to really take that time out to really reflect with yourself and take time to accept accountability when somebody pulls that card for you, man. Because if there's one thing that we know about cards, if you swipe that card and the balance is there to cover what you're trying to pay for, you feel great. But if you swipe that card and you know that you can't get everything right over here on this grocery aisle based off of the amount that is in your account, you start to feel a kind of certain way. And we hate that accountability when that person is saying like, your card declined. Now, to be fair, some of those people don't need to pull your card, but like he says, when you got to get honest or die line, we got to just skip the small talk and just get straight to it. And those people also have karma coming, because, you also don't got to be like this and grab the announcement and be like, ma'am, on register 7, your card has declined. Your card has declined. You don't got to be that person. But the one thing that you really got to make sure is that you can look back at a lot of these times and take it as a puzzle piece to your growth, man. So, I'm going to go ahead and end it over here on that note. But I do want to thank everybody who has been tuning in with me thus far. Of course, if you're not already following me, that is at TYMD.podcast. It's on Instagram, that's on TikTok, that's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music Podcasts, and everywhere else that you can enjoy podcasts at. And like I always say, if you got a story to share, email itymd.podcast@gmail.com, man. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, man. My name is Ricky Montoya, aka the Foolest of all Bears.
That's 5 on your ass, don't get stuck. My shit black.